For decades, Bugatti was more than just a car brand. It was a symbol of extreme luxury, unmatched engineering, and one simple idea. We don't follow limits, we define them. From the legendary Veyron to the record-breaking Chiron, Bugatti built machines that seemed untouchable, cars that could reach speeds most manufacturers wouldn't even dare to attempt. But behind the glossy launches and billionaire garages, a quiet storm was forming in Europe. A storm called regulation. The European Union had been tightening rules on emissions, fuel efficiency, and environmental impact. And while most car companies adjusted, slowed down, or adapted, Bugatti did something different. They resisted. Because for Bugatti, the problem wasn't just engineering. It was identity. How do you build a 1,500 horsepower hypercar when the world is telling you to reduce power, reduce emissions, and rethink everything? According to industry insiders, Bugatti reportedly spent millions of euros trying to navigate, influence, and challenge parts of these evolving EU regulations. Lobbying efforts, engineering workarounds, legal consultations, advanced hybrid concepts. Everything was on the table. Because the stakes were massive. If Bugatti complied fully, it risked losing what made it Bugatti. But if it didn't, it risked disappearing entirely. And then came the turning point. The EU rules didn't stop. They didn't slow down. They didn't bend. They simply became reality. And despite years of effort, and millions spent trying to fight or adapt around them, Bugatti ultimately had to accept the direction of change. The era of pure combustion hypercars was ending. Not because Bugatti failed, but because the world itself had changed faster than even Bugatti could resist. And here's the most shocking part. This wasn't just about one company. This was a warning to the entire automotive industry. Because if Bugatti, a brand built on no-limits engineering, couldn't escape the future of regulation, then no one could. Today, Bugatti is evolving. Hybrid systems, electrification, new engineering philosophies. Still fast, still extreme, but no longer untouched by the rules of the world. And maybe that's the real story here. Not that Bugatti lost, but that even the most powerful engineering empire on Earth eventually has to bow to time, law, and change. And the question now is, if Bugatti couldn't fight it forever, who can? But what makes this story even more intense is what happened behind the scenes. Because this wasn't just a simple disagreement between a car company and regulators. It was a battle between two worlds. On one side, you had Bugatti, a brand built on emotion, power, sound, and pure mechanical excess. On the other side, Europe, focused on efficiency, sustainability, and a future without high emissions. And neither side was willing to fully step back. Inside Bugatti's engineering teams, the pressure was enormous. Engineers weren't just designing cars anymore. They were trying to solve an impossible equation. How do you keep a hypercar alive in a world that no longer wants it to exist in its old form? Reports suggest multiple future concepts were tested internally. Some ideas were too radical, some too expensive, and some simply couldn't survive regulatory reality. Every direction led to compromise. And for a brand like Bugatti, compromise is dangerous. Because compromise is the opposite of what made them legendary. But time doesn't wait for legacy. It forces change. Slowly, the reality became unavoidable. The future of Bugatti could not look like its past. No matter how much money was spent, no matter how powerful the engineering, no matter how iconic the name, the system around it had already shifted. And this is where the emotional weight of the story hits hardest. Because Bugatti didn't just lose a legal or technical battle. It lost the ability to continue its old identity in the same way. Still, instead of disappearing, it adapted. Hybrid technology entered the picture. Electric assistance systems began to reshape performance. The sound changed. The engineering philosophy changed. Even the definition of power started to change. And yet, something important remains. Bugatti is still Bugatti. Fast, extreme, exclusive. But now, operating inside a world where limits actually exist. And maybe that's the final lesson in this entire story. No matter how powerful a brand becomes, no matter how much money it spends, no matter how untouchable it feels, it still exists inside a system bigger than itself. Rules evolve, technology evolves, and even legends must evolve with them. Because, in the end, the real loss wasn't just Bugatti's fight against EU law. It was the end of an era where anything could exist without compromise. And as Bugatti moves forward into this new era, the industry is watching closely. Because what happens to Bugatti doesn't stay with Bugatti. It sets a signal. Other luxury manufacturers are already adjusting their strategies, rethinking engines, rewriting performance goals, rebuilding entire identities around electrification and hybrid power. But there's still a quiet debate inside the automotive world. A question that no regulation has fully answered yet. Can a hypercar still feel like a hypercar without the raw, uncontrolled power that defined it for decades? For Bugatti fans, this isn't just technical. It's emotional. Because the sound of a W16 engine, the vibration of extreme speed, the feeling of something that shouldn't exist on normal roads, that was part of the experience itself. And now, that experience is being reshaped. Not erased, but transformed. Inside Bugatti's new direction, engineers are trying to preserve something invisible but essential. The feeling of dominance. Even if the source of that dominance is no longer purely combustion. Even if electricity and hybrid systems now play a central role. The goal is no longer just speed. It's identity under restriction. And that's what makes this story bigger than one company. It's about the future of performance itself. A future where power is still there, but controlled differently, measured differently, and delivered in ways the past never imagined. So when people say, Bugatti spent millions fighting EU law, and still lost, that's only part of the truth. Because the real outcome is more complicated. Bugatti didn't just lose. It evolved under pressure. It was forced into a new definition of what it means to be extreme. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only way legends survive in a changing world. But one final question remains. As the industry moves deeper into electrification, and regulations become even stricter, will future Bugattis still feel like the machines that once broke speed records and redefined impossible? Or will they become something entirely new? Something powerful, but unfamiliar. And that is where the story is heading next. Not the end of Bugatti, but the beginning of a completely different era. An era where even legends must ask, what does speed mean when everything is controlled? And this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Because while many people see this as the end of an era, inside the automotive world, it's actually seen as a transformation. Bugatti is not disappearing. It is being rebuilt, piece by piece, concept by concept. Future prototypes are expected to carry hybrid powertrains that still push extreme performance, but in a way that fits within strict environmental frameworks. And engineers are not giving up on emotion either. They are trying to preserve something very specific. That instant surge of acceleration. That overwhelming sense of force. That feeling that a car is doing something almost impossible. But now, the challenge is different. It's no longer just about building the fastest machine. It's about building the fastest machine that the world will allow to exist. And that creates a completely new kind of pressure. Because when limits are external, creativity has to evolve. And Bugatti, more than almost any brand, has always thrived under impossible expectations. Still, not everyone is convinced. Purists argue that no matter how advanced the technology becomes, something will always be lost when the raw mechanical heart is replaced. Others believe the opposite. That this new era will unlock performance levels that were never possible before. Faster response times, smarter power delivery, and efficiency combined with extreme speed. So the debate continues. But one thing is already clear. The automotive world that once celebrated pure combustion dominance is now entering a phase where intelligence matters just as much as horsepower. And in that shift, Even the biggest names are being forced to adapt. Bugatti's journey with EU regulations is not just a story about laws or money. It's a story about change being unavoidable. Even for the strongest. Even for the most iconic. Even for a brand that once defined what no limits truly meant. And maybe that's the final message here. Progress doesn't always ask permission. It arrives, whether the world is ready or not. And those who survive it are not the ones who resist it forever, but the ones who learn how to evolve inside it. So Bugatti didn't just lose a fight. It entered a new chapter. One where power still exists, but the rules of power have changed forever. And as the industry moves forward, only one question remains. In the future of hypercars, what will we consider legendary when everything has changed? And maybe that question is exactly why this story matters so much. Because Bugatti was never just about speed. It was about what humans thought was possible. Every generation of Bugatti pushed the edge further than anyone expected. It wasn't just engineering. It was ambition made physical. But now, the definition of possible is changing again. Not because ambition disappeared, but because the world around it is being rebuilt. Stricter rules, cleaner energy, smarter systems, a completely different direction for performance itself. And yet, even in this shift, Bugatti's influence doesn't fade. It evolves into something else. A benchmark, a reminder that there was a time when machines were built not just to be efficient, but to be unforgettable. So when people look back at this moment years from now, they may not remember the exact regulation, or the legal details, or even the financial battles, but they will remember what changed because of it. The end of pure combustion dominance, and the birth of a new hybrid era of hypercars. And Bugatti will stand right at the center of that transition. Not as a brand that lost, but as a brand that was forced to redefine itself in real time. Because in the end, the story was never just about EU law. It was about evolution. And whether even the most powerful names in automotive history can survive when the rules of the game change completely. Bugatti didn't stop being Bugatti. It just stopped being the Bugatti the world once knew. And now, the road ahead belongs to whatever comes next. And in the end, this wasn't just a battle of Bugatti versus EU law. It was a turning point in automotive history. A moment where one of the most powerful names in performance engineering was forced to accept a simple truth. No matter how advanced you are still part of a changing world. Bugatti didn't fall. It didn't disappear. It didn't lose its legacy. But it did lose something else. The freedom to exist without compromise. And maybe that's what makes this story so powerful. Because it shows us something bigger than cars, money, or politics. It shows us that even the greatest engineering legends are not above time. They are shaped by it. And now, as the industry moves forward into electrification, hybrid power, and strict regulations, Bugatti stands at a new starting point. Not as the ruler of a limitless era, but as a symbol of adaptation in a controlled future. So when people say, Bugatti spent millions fighting EU law, and still lost, the real truth is more complex. Bugatti didn't lose its fight. It lost the old world it once ruled. And in doing so, it stepped into the future like everyone else. Quietly, reluctantly, but inevitably. And that is where every legend eventually arrives. Not at the end, but at transformation.